Welcome to the Light the A Sports Podcast, home of the top interviews of Aggie Sports Nation.
Former Utah State basketball head coach Rod Tueller. Utah State gymnastics coach Kristen White. Well, welcome to the program, John Eccles. Ashley Cardozo. Welcome to the program, former Utah State running back Emmett White. How you doing?
And now, here are your hosts, Jason Walker and Eric Frandsen.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Light the A Podcast. Jason Walker, Eric Frandsen. Got another, we've been having a lot of men's basketball-related guests on lately. We've got another one. This time it's a current Utah State player. He's currently one of the top players in the country in three-point percentage. He's the point guard for Utah State. Steven Ashworth joins the show. How you doing, Steven?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me on. Super excited about this. How are you guys today?
We're doing great. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, of course.
Glad you could spend some time with us. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show and get a chance to speak with you for a few minutes is it is kind of about that three-point shooting. You know, it's kind of become something you're elite at. And I was doing math the other day, like a couple weeks ago. So I was thinking, how many threes is this guy going to end up making this season? And I looked up the record at Utah State, and, there's a very reasonable chance. It kind of depends on how many games you play and also if you have another one of those 8 3-point games. But
yeah,
you're very reasonably capable of beating J.C. Carroll's single-season record. And I guess kind of my question is, what would a record like that kind of mean to you to be able to break something like that?
That would definitely be something that is surreal and amazing individual accomplishment. Not even going to lie to you, I kind of got chills just thinking about that opportunity and when you're mentioning that because of the fact that we know that this Saturday against Nevada, JC's jersey is going to be retired and how great he was in the Aggie blue. And so that would be something that would be super special. And obviously our goal is to play as many games as possible the rest of the year. And we know that we have 5 left guaranteed, 4 in the regular season, and 1 that's guaranteed in the conference tournament. And so our team goal, obviously, is to keep winning and playing as many games as possible. And then, if things work out to where, they need my shot from behind the arc more and more in certain games, I'm definitely staying ready and willing and capable of making as many as the team needs.
Yeah, if it's motivation, if you win the conference tournament and play in an NCAA tournament game, that at your current average, that'll pretty much make you a shoo-in. So I know that's
no pressure. Right? That's the reason to win those games, right? To get the record. That's the only reason.
It's the only possible conceivable reason to want to win those games, right?
Yeah. Who wants a Mountain West championship and a nice ring at the end of the year? But
it's all about the individual accolades. Yeah.
It's all about making 116 threes. But,
yeah, that's right.
So, Steven, let me ask you just your progression as a player. As now you're in your 3rd season wearing the Aggie jersey. You've improved every year, and certainly this year there's been a massive jump. Part of that is precipitated by, unfortunately, the injury of one of your teammates in Rylan Jones. And you've been forced into more minutes, a larger role, and by and large, you've accepted that and excelled in that position. But how different is it not having Rylan on the court versus having him and having his presence with you and your teammates?
Yeah, we definitely miss Rylan in a lot of different ways out there on the court. He's obviously there with us at practice and all the other things, and still being a great leader with his voice and just other things that he sees that, he'll remind me about or remind the other guys to make sure that we're doing on both sides of the ball. And that's one of the things that makes Rylan such a great player is that he's really, really headsy and smart. And Rylan and I are roommates on the road, and we actually talk about that quite a bit of how, that's what him and I need to be able to be great at in order to play at this level. You don't see a lot of, 6-foot point guards in college basketball anymore because it is difficult to guard both sides of the ball and then excel on the offensive side. And so a lot of that comes down to, as you mentioned, off-season work and progression. And this off-season, I really took it personally that, I don't try to listen to people outside of the program that often, but I do remember specifically a few tweets or articles about how the Aggies need to hit the transfer portal and get some better guards. And so I definitely took that really personally and wanted to make sure that I came back this next season showing that we already had the guards on the roster that we needed. And I think that you've seen that all the way through the team. And I think that's a credit to not only our coaching staff, but the individual players that are willing to be in the gym a lot in the off season and work on their game, and not afraid to watch some of the painful clips of plays that you wish you would have done differently and things like that, because you got to be a player that's willing to kind of turn over those rocks and admit to yourself, hey, I got to get better in this situation, and I got to be more effective, or I got to have better ball control. And a lot of those things, I think, which have led me into a bigger role and also playing more consistently and just better overall.
So I want to ask a little bit more about improvements, specifically in three-point shooting. I know I keep focusing on one thing. I know that's not the only thing you do, but I mean, you come to Utah State and you shoot like 36%, which is already above NCAA average. Then you shoot 39% your second season, which is borderline elite. You know, most people would be okay with shooting that for their whole career, but you go above and beyond. You're shooting 47% now. Like, how do you keep improving from, you know, already being a good shooter day one at Utah State to now it's, you know, borderline leading the country?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that obviously as a smaller guard, I knew from the beginning coming in my freshman year that it was really important that I had a very consistent three-point shot because, you know, with all of the individual goals I may have of playing basketball after college basketball, you got to be able to do things like that. And I think you watch Steph Curry in the way that he's changed the game. It's really because of his consistency from behind the arc. And so each year I've really tried to make sure that in the off season, I'm obviously every single day, even throughout the season, I have somewhat of a standard of making 100 threes every single day, whether that's catch and shoot, whether it's off the dribble some, or just, you know, off ball screens. And so I think my freshman year, I shot it really well, but there was also some times where I shot some that I wasn't as comfortable, whether that was coming off a ball screen or things like that. And so I knew that in order to increase my overall percentage, I maybe have had the same catch and shoot percentage my whole career, but I think whether it's coming off the ball or coming off of pin down screens or other off ball screens, I think that's where I've also really excelled my percentage, which is then just overall really up my shooting ability from behind the arc and allowed me to, as you said, become one of the better three-point shooters in the country, and hoping to just keep that going.
I'm curious, how much of a green light do you have in terms of three-point shooting? Like, what's the three-point shot that'll give you maybe a side glance from Ryan Odom coming back down the court, whether or not you made it?
Coach Odom is great about giving his players freedom in all aspects. He's really good at, instead of being results-driven, being process-driven of, all right, is this a shot that Steven has continuously worked on and made in practice and other games, or is this a shot that Steven took as he's made the last three and so he just checked this one? So I think that from that regard, I do have a lot of freedom. Most of the times, I think there's probably only been, one or two this season that I've taken that coaches then talk to me after, whether it's in the huddle or in film. And most of those times, I would say it's attributed to the fact that it's not necessarily that I took a bad shot, but maybe the team is on, a drought of 4 possessions where we haven't gotten a bucket, and it's a quick three instead of maybe trying to make the defense work a little bit, maybe get a layup or a kick-out three instead of somewhat settling of an, off the pick-and-roll quick three. So those are some of the times that we just have to be cautious, I think, of what shots we're taking. But at the same time, he always wants me to be aggressive when I'm shooting. And I think that also attributes to my good shooting ability and percentages here. Is when you're a player and you can know that every single person on that team wants you shooting that, it gives you a lot of confidence and a lot of stress-free shots in a game for sure.
This is a tough league. Mountain West it's tough. And that's just from us on the outside. You're in the middle of it all. So what's, from your perspective, as a player on the court, watching film, being in these games, being in these venues, what's the difference between winning and losing in the Mountain West?
That's a great question. As you said, it's so tough this year. I believe it's the best the conference has been ever since I've been here, and as well as probably since those 2010, 11 days or whatever it is when the league got 5 bids into the NCAA tournament. And I would credit that to just the individual talent that each team has. There's a lot of really talented players in the league that can, in a way, kind of beat you themselves down the stretch. We saw that at San Jose State with their guard, Omari Moore. He was really tough to stop for us down the stretch, and that was really the difference at the end of the game. And so being in the thick of it, I would say our personal level of physicality and focus to the other team's tendencies has been the difference in our wins and losses this year in conference. And I think you can go through the line and see all of those different opportunities where we maybe weren't as physical as we wanted to be. We were a little more reactive. Our physicality came in the fact that we got hit, and then we hit them back, and then that became a foul, which put them at the foul line in games and things like that. And so when we are more physical and a little bit more focused on what each individual player on the other team loves to do, and we try to force them to do something different, their second or third option, I think that's where we found the most success this season.
So I want to touch on something you kind of said earlier, and you talked about improving yourself as a guard. Utah State supposedly not having guards, at least from the outside narrative, because you weren't the only guard to really make a big jump. You jumped from like 8 or 9 points to 15. Max Shulga going from 4 or 5, and he's now at like 11 or 12. Even Sean Bairstow, he's not had a huge statistical jump, but all three of you, and I don't know whether Sean's considered a guard in your guys' system, but
I would agree he is. So
yeah, so it seems like you've had at least 3 players making big improvements this season to make sure Utah State has good guard play on this team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I kind of alluded to the fact that guys were wanting to be in the gym earlier, and we loved being in the gym this offseason. It was so much fun. We had a whole bunch of pickup games, a whole bunch of one-on-one games, and all these different things that we were able to compete at a high level. And I think that competition, that consistency of being in the gym has really shown forth on the court this season. You saw it last night with Max. It was unbelievable, some of the shots he was hitting and just some of the big-time plays he made for us when we really needed it. And I think that was something that was special about this team. Is I actually heard from Scotty G after the game, just some of his takes. He was saying that he was talking with Air Force's play-by-play guy, and they were talking about in shoot-around. They said, if we can just stop Ashworth and Funk, we'll have a chance to be in this game and win this game. Well, I think they did a great job on myself and Taylor. And then I was telling Scotty G, that's the best part about this team, is that a lot of teams have to really force it to some of their best players, as opposed to our team. The go-to guy is the open guy, is what we always say. And I think that you saw that really come forth against Air Force last night, is that Max had a lot of open looks, and he was our go-to guy last night, and he was knocking them down. And so I think that that's what gives me a lot of confidence moving forward throughout the rest of the year, is that we have so many weapons, we have a lot of talent, and we have a lot of guys that we can trust down the stretch. And so I'm excited to see that show forth on the court for sure.
Steven, I understand that you had an opportunity to go play for Duke. What was that process like, and why did you turn them down?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a unique situation regarding the Duke scholarship offer. It started my junior year. Frank Jackson was my high school teammate my freshman and sophomore year. And so Coach K, John Shire, and the rest of the coaching staff came out to Lone Peak for a practice. And the interesting thing was that they were recruiting Frank as a point guard to go play for them at Duke. Well, they came to practice, and I was the starting point guard, and Frank was the 2 guard. And Coach K asked my coach, hey, why don't you have Frank playing point? We're recruiting him as a point. And he said, well, Frank's our second best point guard. And so he kind of took notice of that, and then they started watching my junior year as well. And John Shire was the one that heavily recruited me and said, hey, we really like the way you play. We like your leadership abilities. At this moment, we have a preferred walk-on spot for you if you want to take it, with a lot of opportunities to be in the rotation, not just a walk-on just to be at Duke, but to play. And, at that point I said thank you so much, but I actually committed to Spencer Nelson and Coach Duryea at Utah State, who was actually the first university to offer me a full ride. And so I committed to Utah State. Well, then going into my senior year, Coach Duryea gets fired right at the end of my year, and we go to the Geico High School National Championships, and we're playing the number 1 seed Montbird, who had R.J. Barrett, Andrew Nemhard, and a lot of other great players that are currently playing in the NBA. And I was actually the only Division I player we had on our Lone Peak roster at that time. And so we go to that game, and I actually had 29 points in the second half. And apparently it was right during the Final Four, so all of the coaches were at this banquet, and it was on every TV at the Final Four, and everybody was just watching that second half. Well, since Coach Duryea got fired, my recruitment was reopened, and it was up to Coach Smith to, in a way, re-recruit me and re-sign me, if that's what he wanted as well. And during that time, my head coach then got a call from Coach K and John Shire saying, hey, and I guess I failed to mention this, but with that preferred walk-on offer, they said, if we don't get the 12 scholarship players, you would be the first to get a full-ride scholarship. So that was like part of the caveat, is I was taking a chance of going, but I could get a scholarship possibly. Well, then after that game and scoring 29 points against the other player they were just recruiting that year, and R.J. Barrett, who was number 2 in the class, with Zion Williamson, they said, hey, we only have 10 scholarship guys on the roster. We want to offer you that full-ride scholarship, but we need you to come this year. And with that happening so late and that scholarship offer coming at that time, it was probably March, with the NCAA tournament going on, mid-March at this point. I had already received my mission call to Indianapolis and was already having my assignment and everything. And so a lot of prayer went into it, and they would have needed me to forego my mission at least for a year and go right away, right out of high school. And so after a lot of prayer, I felt like I needed to go on my mission, and that the basketball opportunities would come that I needed after my mission. And I think that I've seen that they certainly have, and it's been a great spot for me up here at Utah State. I absolutely love it. And I think in a lot of ways, the teams I've been on up here have been even better than the teams at Duke. So I think I'm in a better spot for sure. So sorry if that was too long of a story, but there's the story.
No,
beautiful stories. Great story.
We always love stories. Always love hearing players tell stories.
Yeah.
We're certainly glad you came to Utah State. That's about all the time we'll have to talk to you. I wish we could talk to you more. I'm sure there's more we could talk about, but we're thankful for the time you've given to us so far, and glad you could have a chance to chat with us.
Hey, thank you guys so much for your time. Thanks for all you do to cover Aggie sports, and hopefully after we get that Mountain West Tournament Championship and a few games in the NCAA tournament, we'll celebrate that on the podcast once again, and who knows, maybe we'll have a new record holder as well.
Yeah, if you do, we'll
right.
we'll see if we can have you on if you break that record and get all those wins. So thank you very much.
Yeah, best of luck.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
This has been the Light the A podcast with Jason Walker and Eric Frandsen. Be sure to like the episode and share your favorite part of it. You can also find the show on Twitter at 1069 The Fan.